them all what I'm made up. Strut down the hall, won't stop till I get enough.
Okay, so today we're diving into something pretty interesting. The launch of Meghan Markle's new product line.
As ever, right?
As ever, yeah.
Yeah.
We've got this fascinating article from The Cut, which kind of lays out everything that happened leading up to the launch, and then, of course, the big debut.
I think what's so interesting is that, like, the journey to this launch was so bumpy.
Oh, yeah?
Like, The Cut goes into all these, like, initial problems with the name. Like, they were going to go with American Riviera Orchard.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and then there were rumors about staff changes and even, like, a copyright thing with Harry and David.
Oh, wow.
And then on top of that, you have the wildfires in L.A., which caused a postponement. So there was all this buildup to this launch.
Right. Yeah, it seemed like forever that we were hearing about this mysterious product line.
Right, exactly.
So then when it finally did launch,
Yeah.
you know, the picture that was painted was one of huge success.
Yeah.
The article really highlighted that limited edition wildflower honey with the honeycomb that sold out in, what, like 5 minutes?
Yeah, under 5 minutes, and it was $28 a jar.
Yeah, right. And it was all inspired by Meghan's, like, beekeeping in her home.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because they do point out that it's not necessarily honey from her bees, but it's inspired by her, you know, her kind of like love of honey and harvesting honey.
Right.
But still $28 a jar, gone in 5 minutes. That's
impressive, yeah.
It really shows you the power of her brand.
Yeah.
Like, people want a piece of that.
Yeah.
So that was like the initial story, right?
Yeah.
Huge success, everything's great.
Right. It seems like a marketer's dream, right?
Totally, yeah.
But then it gets interesting.
Yeah.
Because the article then reveals that there was this email from Meghan herself about sort of an oops moment.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, so it turns out they oversold the honey.
Oh, wow.
Meaning they sold more than they had.
Okay.
And some orders couldn't be fulfilled.
Oops.
So those customers got refunds.
Oh, so this is where it gets kind of tricky, right? Because on the one hand, you have this incredible demand, which is amazing. But then on the other hand, you can't deliver.
Right.
So it's this really interesting problem to have.
Right.
But, you know, Meghan reaching out directly, you know, through this email, I think that was probably a really smart move to try and kind of smooth things over.
Yeah. And she actually went even further than just an apology. You know,
Really?
The article said she promised that the customers who were affected would be the first to get the next limited edition item for free.
Wow. Okay. So she's like trying to really make it right.
Yeah, exactly. It seems like a pretty big gesture.
Yeah. It really shows that she's focused on customer experience.
Right.
You know, making sure those people feel valued, even though this mistake happened.
Right.
But then there's this follow-up email from the As Ever team.
Right.
And they give a more technical explanation.
Okay.
They say that the website traffic was so high, it overwhelmed their system.
Oh, so basically like the website crashed.
Well, not exactly crashed, but like the back end couldn't keep up.
Okay, so for those of us who don't know anything about websites,
Sure.
like, what does that mean?
Okay, so think of it this way. The website that you see is like the storefront, right?
Okay.
But then behind that, there's this whole system called the back end,
Okay.
which is like the warehouse and the management system, all the stuff that makes the website work.
Okay.
And what they're saying is that when the traffic surged, it was like too many customers flooding the warehouse all at once.
I see.
So the system just couldn't handle it.
Right.
In fact, the article even quotes the team saying that the orders came in so fast that the back end of the site didn't have a chance to keep up.
Wow.
Yeah, but you know, the author of the article makes a good point, like, shouldn't they have seen this coming?
Right, especially with someone like Meghan Markle.
Exactly. She's a huge public figure.
Right.
So, you know, it's not like this was some surprise launch.
Right.
People were waiting for this.
Right.
So it is kind of interesting that they weren't more prepared for that level of interest.
Yeah, it seems like a disconnect, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Between like the amazing marketing that got everyone so excited and then the actual nuts and bolts of fulfilling those orders.
Yeah, and I think this is something that's relevant for anyone who's listening, you know.
Right.
Whether you're selling honey or you know, T-shirts or whatever.
Right.
If you're selling online, you have to be prepared for those sudden surges in traffic.
Right.
It's not just about having enough servers. It's also about using data to predict demand,
Right.
you know, based on your brand and your marketing.
Right.
And then making sure that your systems can adapt,
Right.
you know, if things suddenly get really busy.
Right.
So it's a really interesting challenge.
It is. Yeah, it makes you wonder, like, how any business truly prepares for that level of interest.
Yeah, it's a good question.
So for our listeners out there, I think the key takeaway here is that even when there's tons of buzz and anticipation, you know, those kind of boring logistical things,
Right.
the nuts and bolts of actually selling online, those can really trip you up.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it can happen to anyone.
Yeah.
But the cut does mention that there's a summer collection coming.
Oh, really? What did they think it's going to be?
Well, they're speculating on things like strawberry jam
Yeah.
and like cold brewed iced tea packets.
Interesting.
So like more of that kind of like, homemade vibe.
Right.
But they do say that, the lessons learned from this whole honey situation will be crucial for making sure that future launches go more smoothly.
Yeah, fingers crossed, right?
Right.
Hopefully they've got their back end sorted out now.
Right.
And they can handle all the traffic.
Right.
Because it's going to be just as big, if not bigger.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
But, thinking about this whole thing, this whole incident with the honey,
Yeah.
it really raises some interesting questions about celebrity-driven brands.
Mm-hmm.
You have this blend of like personal inspiration
Yeah.
and then this business venture.
Yeah.
And it seems like the challenge isn't so much creating the product,
Right.
it's managing all the desire.
Yeah. It's like, how do you keep up with the demand when it's so intense?
Right. And is that maybe even harder than the actual production side of things?
Yeah. That's a really good question. I think it's something to think about.
Yeah.
For anyone who's interested in this world of celebrity brands and, online retail,
Right.
it's not just about the product. It's about the whole ecosystem.
Yeah.
And how you manage that.
Well said. Yeah.
Thanks.
That's all the time we have for today's deep dive, but it certainly gives us all something to think about.
Definitely.
Until next time.
Sound the alarm. I'm coming up. We'll have a ball. I'm sweet like a buttercup. You're Barbie doll. Show them all what I'm made of. Strut down the hall. Won't stop till I get enough.